floodings, droughts, hurricanes, and wildfires are sudden events caused by environmental factors which have a profoundly harmful effect on the people, its surroundings, and community. These kinds of natural disasters are experienced in every region of the United States. We might not be affected by these natural disasters on a regular basis, but here in the Bay, we are mostly more prone to deal with earthquakes or wildfires. Being prepared for these type of disasters is essential for everyone: families, schools, individuals, and businesses. It starts by becoming aware of the risks of different disasters and hazards that could affect you and your family, where you live, work, or go to school. Recently, as most of you guys are aware, these past few weeks we've dealt with the worst wildfires in history. All of us here have experienced some of the detrimental effects by cause of inhaling the toxic smoke of the wildfires that occurred in Northern and South California. For the reason that, due to the horrific air quality we've dealt with, even caused multiple schools to cancel class in consideration of the unhealthy air quality. As Morgan Windsor from ABC News states, San Francisco, Stockton, and Sacramento ranked as the world's 3 most polluted cities on November 16th. According to the Washington Post, the horrific Camp Fire, which killed at least 85 people, destroyed 14,000 residents, and shared an area the size of Chicago, as it roamed across North California. We should be adequately prepared for these types of situations. We can't prevent natural disasters from happening, but we can better prepare for its after effects. Today, my group and I will first discuss the tragedies and devastation that come along with these disasters. Furthermore, how it impacts everyone. Second, address how to develop an emergency plan on protecting yourself and others around you, as well as describe what kind of basic necessities would be essential to prepare for the worst. Lastly, we will illustrate what could possibly happen if you take your chances and don't follow our emergency plan.
To start off with what our problem is, California is a beautiful state, but we're always at risk for destruction and disaster. We gotta think ahead of nature, as in California, we are at risk of earthquakes and wildfires. Your family, you, and any of your loved ones are your most important aspect of life that you want to protect. Transportation will be difficult, and resources will be very scarce, since the grocery store that you used to go to on a normal basis will probably be destroyed. Your neighbors will now be more people who will be fighting to be rescued, to fight for evacuation, and fight for the general necessities of life. Your home, businesses, or even a storage unit, sheds, anything like that, will also be at risk and need to be taken into consideration when preparing for the worst. People will be displaced just within minutes of each disaster. Buildings will be razed in minutes. There will be a battle for time to get to a safe place where you can meet with your family and your other loved ones. The importance of this is that the damage to yourself and the community will be immense. California has the San Andreas Fault that runs all the way through the coastline, which goes right through the Bay Area. Seismologist Lucy Jones states that we're overdue for a major earthquake, since the last one we've had was Loma Prieta back in 1989, and that could come along with flooding, which will also destroy our homes. Predicting earthquakes is out of reach for today's technology, but we can do the best we can through preparation and thinking ahead of nature. Thousands of us will have lasting effects. Some of us will not even live through the disasters that are to come. Moments after, phone lines, internet connection, and any type of communication that isn't based off of two-way radios will be impossible. Running water and artificial heat will not be around since water lines and gas lines and electricity won't be available. So you have to take that into consideration so you can plan on where to meet with your family and where to last until you're rescued. Thousands will be homeless for months, maybe even years, as the cost of living here and rebuilding will be very immense. And since you won't be able to go to work because most workplaces will be destroyed, unless you have insurance, the negative effects of disasters can hold on to you for years to come. If you do not prepare and the problem is not solved, for wildfires, lasting effects could be mental and physical. Luis Santos states that up to 40% of patients remain with neuropsychiatric deficits after breathing in the cancerous toxins that come with wildfires. Those cancerous toxins come from the buildings that have insulation and other chemical-filled materials that will burn, and you'll be susceptible to breathe them if you don't have the right equipment to live through the disaster. Earthquakes leave everyone in mass confusion and fear, along with helplessness because of the very apparent damage. Being in the wrong place at the wrong time will be a very difficult thing to live through, since the buildings that we used to go to buy food, to even live in, will now be rubble or burnt to crisp. Physical health is risked as you have to find a certain place where to live, and most buildings will be unsafe. You will have to avoid injury as much as possible since the buildings will be inhabitable. Now that you have an idea of the tragedies that will come with the horrific, unpredictable disasters, we will inform you on how you prepare for the worst.
For any natural disaster, confusion is going to be a major factor that's going to be impacting the community, but most importantly, it's going to be impacting you and your loved ones. That's why, prior to any natural disaster, you should set up a designated meeting point for your loved ones. Preferably an open area that's walking distance over 5 miles, like a schoolyard or a park. The reason why you want it to be an open area is so you can avoid any damaged buildings that could cause harm to you. Once you rally up your family, you can decide your next plan of action. If your house has been damaged, well, you can use tents and wool blankets. The reason for wool blankets is the wool blankets is able to keep your body warm while still being wet. And as for tents, as long as it keeps the wind out and your body temperature in, it will be a good temporary shelter. Additionally, you're going to need resources to sustain yourself and your family. This is where an emergency kit comes into play. Hugo Otero explains in her article, lack of evidence supporting the effectiveness of disaster supply kits, that better training in household emergencies preparedness can save lives, prevent worsening of chronic medical conditions, and decrease the likelihood of responders having to brave dangerous situations to assist those in need. An emergency kit, you should have the resources to self-sustain yourself for 3 days. You will need water, preferably a gallon per person per day. Food, and the main factor you should be focusing on is nutrition, making sure it's high in protein and carbs in order for it to convert into energy. Shelf life, food that can stay in your shelf for more than 2 to 3 years. An example of this is canned foods, granola bars, peanut butter, dried fruits, crackers, cereals. Now, if you're a meat eater like myself, you can always get tuna can, chicken can, beef can. Also, you can always buy a pre-made first aid kit at your local Walmart, and batteries should also be in your emergency kit. Aside from foods, some good accessories you may need, more tools for your toolbox, is a Leatherman's tool that could come in handy for any handyman work. Also, extra clothes, since you might not have access to any water or washers, it's good to have a clean pair of socks. And you can store all of this either in your backyard, your home, the back of your car, as long as it's covered away from the sun. You be good to go. If you're missing an item, once the disaster has hit, you could trade goods with other individuals. People are going to want to balance their stress out because everyone's going to be stressed out once the disaster hits. So people are going to want alcohol. Now, a good tool is buying mini liquor bottles, so you can use it as currency. It's lightweight, easy, portable. Now, chaos and confusion is going to be impacting your community, so it's important to keep your family safe. As many as you all know, in the campfire, a lot of theft and looting has been going on. Therefore, a firearm or a handgun is good to better protect your family and yourself. According to the article Emergency Survival Kits by Matthew Stein, he states that it can be difficult to focus on a task when skies are blue and nothing is threatened. But it's often too late if you wait until the disaster strikes. As soon as the disaster hits, power lines could be affected, which means no communication, no Instagram. But you already established a rally point area for your family so you guys can reconnect. Everyone's going to flood the supermarket, buying whatever they see on stores, on the shelf. However, you already have an emergency plan and possess the resources to self-sustain you for 3 days. The value of money is going to be down because there's going to be no connection, no power. But you're willing to trade some of your goods with other individuals in your community. While all these emergency services are going to be assisting others, you don't need to rely on them because you already constructed a plan to better prepare yourself for an event like this. Thus, not being a primary focus for the emergency service, and additionally, you can help aid to those in your community. According to the government website FEMA.gov, it states that nearly 60% of adults have not practiced in a disaster. We may have the resources in our homes, but we don't actually practice what to do in case a disaster hits. Now, we all in this classroom has been affected by a disaster. Whether it's been an earthquake, the wildfire, the smoke from 2 weeks ago. But the rest of America, 80% of Americans live in counties where they experience a natural disaster. So that means only 39% of Americans have a plan, while the rest of us don't. So now that you know the proper steps on how to better prepare yourself for a natural disaster, we will now discuss what you experience if you or now follow these steps.
According to sociology of disaster, being prepared and understanding what to do reduces your fear, anxiety, and your losses accompanying natural disasters. Now, in order to reduce the impact of these emergencies, we have to make sure that our household economics as well as our health needs are satisfied by enough insurance coverage. But in addition to the physical impacts of natural disasters, there's also emotional effects of losing a loved one, a home, or a treasured possession. When people are stressed, they become more irritable, depressed, angry, or withdrawn. And children and adults are most vulnerable to these psychological effects of natural disasters. Not only are our friends and families the ones affected, but entire communities. As you can see here, this is the disaster impacts model. This is basically showing how communities, their characteristics, set for how a disaster affects them, and what steps can be taken in order to minimize the impact and hasten the recovery. As you can see, it's basically built upon in order to have a family or a community live with resilience. In other words, it's basically recovering quickly. You can sort of picture this as a trampoline that gives you cushion from the impacts of disasters. And again, to emphasize the point on that we may need to survive for 72 hours without access to food, transportation, or power. Every minute, every hour, every day counts because that could just help us survive a little longer in order for help to come. Just being in sick with your friends and your family, that's one less thing to worry about because you guys have an evacuation plan. Imagine being in a disaster, but at least having some peace of mind, knowing that your parents or your friends place that you have discussed. Being able to survive those 3 days is what could be needed in order for help to come or for the disaster to blow over. Here are statistics from goldeagle.com that shows the 5 most states at risk of, and these are different natural disasters. As you can see, California is number 2 at risk of flooding and number 1 at risk of fires. In these events, you can find yourself stressed, confused in the middle of these disasters. As you all know that we did have first-hand experience with the fires that happened last month, but now there are flash floods sweeping through those areas where that were burned by the wildfires. And if you did not know that, we were clearly unprepared. Not only were the people in the fires, but us here, we were unprepared for that disaster. Researchers like Dr. Nadeau, who is professor from Stanford, but is also an allergy specialist, believes that short-term exposure to the wildfires can actually spur lifetimes of allergies, asthma, and constricted breathing. As you saw, like around campus, people were wearing masks, and they were wearing the blue surgical masks, when actually those masks were not the correct ones to wear. Those masks actually give us a false sense of security. The correct masks that we were actually supposed to wear were the N95 masks, which actually painters use in order to prevent them from inhaling the fumes. But we had no idea what exactly we were supposed to wear. People are so they avoid preparation because they're not motivated by the amount of money or the amount of work that it takes in order to create or to start preparation, when in fact it can be simple and cheap. Being prepared can start with just having an emergency evacuation plan, and that costs nothing at all in order to just discuss with your friends or family just where to go in case these events happen. And instead of spending hundreds of dollars on these expensive emergency kits with things that we don't even know how to deal with them or how to operate, we have these things in our homes, and we can make them at fractions of the cost. In the back of our mind, we know that it is possible for these disasters to strike us in California, but we never believe that it can actually happen to our friends, our families, and to ourselves. We will now leave you with how to begin your preparation for these natural disasters.
To conclude, this brings us to an end. To summarize the main points, we explained to you why having an emergency kit and plan will benefit you to reduce the risk and the consequences of the aftermath that comes subsequently afterwards. We went over what kinds of resources would be fundamental and needed to provide for you and others. At last, describe what you may experience and possibly happen if you follow the steps. Natural disasters can cause one to have an emotionally draining experience. Disasters can affect everyone, however, being prepared is what can lessen the damage. You can start taking action by simply creating a plan. Put together an ideal plan by discussing within your family, friends, or household. Figure out what the evacuation plan is. What is the shelter plan? Or the communication plan? Consider the specific needs within your group. Discuss what specific supplies one needs in the daily living or responsibility. Prepare an emergency kit that includes the basic essentials such as family identification records, batteries, flashlights, water, canned foods, first aid kit, clothing, or even family needs. Certainly, there's much more you can add to the emergency kit, but these would just be considered the basic main supplies. Taking action and becoming prepared will benefit you and assist for when a disaster takes place. Disasters don't plan ahead, but you can simply start by planning now so you're prepared for what's to come.